A few weeks ago I posted this video in which I talk through 5 theories about James Islington's Hierarchy series, based on the first book in that series, The Will of the Many. It was my first ever video essay and I wasn't expecting many people to watch it, so thank you to the few hundred people who have. That video ends with this list of 25 open questions, or unsolved mysteries. It's now only a month or so until book 2 comes out, so I'm pretty hyped, and I thought I would do a kind of lightning round where I run through all 25 questions and offer some thoughts. I don't have things to say about all of them, but there is still a lot of theorizing to be done. For those interested, the background image is a series of frescoes from the Villa of the Mysteries in Pompeii, which felt suitably on theme. I should also say that one major change between this video and the last one in terms of my thinking about the Hierarchy series is that I learned the first chapter of book 2 is already available to read online. This video contains spoilers for that preview chapter as well as for The Will of the Many. 1. What was the Rending? This question is directly answered in the preview chapter I just mentioned. The Rending refers to the world being rendered into 3 or copied twice over, which took place about 3,000 years before the events of the series. 2. What was the Cataclysm? This is also partially answered in the preview chapter. The Cataclysm is a disaster that happens about every 300 years and kills most people on res. But I do have 2 more thoughts to add. First, in The Will of the Many, we're told that most survivors of the Cataclysm were children, so, as I've seen pointed out elsewhere, it seems plausible that it only kills those who haven't yet ceded. Second, my personal guess is that the Cataclysm involves the 3 worlds being overlaid on one another, or brought into greater accord. I have 3 reasons for thinking this. To begin with, it seems to be what Estevan did on a local scale at the Normarchia, which obviously left a lot of people dead. Second, given Veridius's preference for academy applicants who haven't yet ceded, and his ongoing efforts to get students through the labyrinth, it seems plausible that not ceding gives you protection against synchronism, as well as protection against cataclysms, which makes sense if these are effectively the same thing. Finally, Viz says that the Cataclysm erased whole nations in a moment, which is what you might imagine happening if alternate histories of the same world get teleported on top of each other. 3. Why does Nateo speak Vetusian comfortably? Nateo is the man in the sapper that Ulciscor interrogates at the start of the book. We know he was part of the Iudicium in Veridius's year, and Viz comments at the time that he speaks Vetusian comfortably. This is weird because it's a dead language, but we later learn that some people in Lucium speak it, and also that an old form of Vetusian is found in the ruins on Solivargus. So my guess is that Nateo is ethnically Vetusian, that Solivargus is part of the Vetusian homeland, and perhaps that Nateo has family ties to Solivargus in particular. This would fit with him having been involved in the discoveries that Cyror, Veridius, and Lannistia made. 4. Who were the Tensian druids? The Tensian druids only show up in an offhand mention near the start of the book, when Viz is living in Tensia. It seems likely they won't really feature in the series, but one hot take is that they could have been people who had a way of exchanging will with animals, like gaining the strength of a bear and so forth. The logic here is just will magic plus standard druid shenanigans. 5. Which other member of the Anguis knows Viz's true identity? Relucia tells Viz that 2 other people in the Anguis know his true identity. We find out that one of these is Estevan, but the other remains a mystery. Now, one guess for this is that it could be Isabel, Viz's elder sister. She's supposed to have died on Zeus, but there are a couple of ways this theory could still make sense. First, if there is a gate to Lucium and Opitium on Zeus, Isabel could already have achieved synchronism, meaning other versions of her would be in play. Second, we know that the hierarchy sometimes forces the heirs of people they subjugate to attend the academy, since this is what later happens to Eidhin. Isabel would have been about the right age and wouldn't yet have ceded, so maybe Veridius had someone fake her death and press-ganged her into running the labyrinth on Solovargus. 6. Who is the second student who died during Veridius's Iudicium? One of the two students who died was Ceror, so who was the other? Well, we actually know 4 of the 6 members of Class 3 for this Iudicium by name: Lanistia, Ceror, Veridius, and Nateo. It might seem like the remaining 2 members will turn out to be significant, and one of them will be the person who died. Unfortunately, we also know that this particular Iudicium involved the members of Class 3 spending a week in the wilderness trying to evade capture by Class 4 and 5. So the other student who died could be anyone out of Class 5, Class 4, or the 2 unknown members of Class 3. 7. How did Relucia disable Ulciscor? Relucia manages to incapacitate Ulciscor by shooting him with a stone-tipped arrow. I don't know why this works, but maybe it has to do with how will magic operates on the other worlds, which is apparently different according to the preview chapter of Book 2. 8. Who are the Correctors and what is up with the blood taint? One idea for this is that blood somehow indicates world of origin, and the Correctors have the job of ensuring everyone stays where they should. Another idea is that the Correctors have the job of ensuring history unfolds as it should. This relates to a larger and more ambitious theory that I might talk about at another time. 9. Who is behind the attacks in Masen and what is their motive? Pass. 10. Is the physician who took Viz's blood secretly a higher rank than Sextus? Yes, for 3 reasons. First, Viz is surprised at the physician's lack of deference. Second, the physician is described as having lithe confidence, and confidence or charisma are used throughout the book as tells for wielding a lot of will. Third, there is a precedent of people posing as lower ranks than they really are. It's what Ulciscor does in the opening chapter, and kind of what Veridius does when he first meets Viz at the Academy. 11. Who else at the Academy has never ceded before? We're told that Veridius has been preferring applicants who haven't ceded, but apart from Viz, we don't actually know who this refers to. I think one solid guess is Eidhin, since he comes from outside the hierarchy, is there under duress, and seems generally opposed to Catanan ways. But I also have another guess, which is set up nicely by the next question. 12. Did Belli lose her finger because she refused to go through the Aurora Columnae? This is obviously a leading question, but I actually think there are 2 reasons to think Belli might never have ceded. First, it's reasonable to assume that Veridius personally chose her to run the labyrinth, and that he would have chosen someone who had never ceded. Second, as alluded to in this question, we're told that Belli lost a finger in an accident when she was 13. Viz also has injuries from about that age, namely the scars on his back that he got as punishment for refusing to cede. So it could be that Belli refused to cede and that removing a finger is like the posh version of having someone whipped. 13. Is Cimmerian a reference to Cymrian? Yes, but this one needs a bit of explanation. When I first read The Will of the Many, I pronounced this word Cymrian in my head. It was only when I looked up the pronunciation guide to make my previous video that I learned it was pronounced Cimmerian. Cymrian, spelled differently, is actually a word in English. According to Greek mythology, the Cimmerians were an obscure tribe who dwelled in the mist-cloaked lands near the gate to the underworld. They feature in the Odyssey. Meanwhile, Cymere, in the Hierarchy series, is supposed to be a cold and mountainous region which could give it a similar foggy atmosphere. More importantly, as discussed in my previous video, it seems closely linked to Lucium and Obitium, which themselves resemble the Greek conception of the afterlife. 14. What is the strange language in the ruins that Viz doesn't recognize? Pass. 15. What are remnants? Pass. 16. Why is the Necropolis a military assignment? This is a fun one. Ulciscor says that the fact military has control of the Necropolis is just one of those things. Later, At the secret military council on Zeus, someone says that the Anguis have been preventing military from using the Necropolis, which seems like slightly unusual phrasing and slightly unusual behaviour. One other salient feature of the Necropolis is that it contains a large number of Vetiria, which are special sarcophagus things that can keep seriously injured people alive or prevent bodies from decaying. Viz likens them to sappers, except that instead of sucking will out of people, they pour will into people or bodies to preserve them. My idea is that the will stored in these things can be drawn down, meaning the Necropolis is actually a kind of giant will reservoir with obvious military applications. 17. Who are the Council of Four? Pass. 18. Who are the conspirators that military is investigating? Pass. 19. What did Veridius promise each of Aequa and Eidhin if they won the Iudicium? We know that Correctors was promised Domitor if he won. Aequa could have been promised the same thing, since we know she was smart and ambitious and only started out in a lower class because of an ill-timed injury. For Eidhin, one thought is that he might have been promised death. We know suicide is sometimes encouraged in his culture, and Eidhin is only at the academy under duress. So it could be that he wants permission to die without bad things then happening to his people. But I don't have a fully worked out theory here, so it's very much in the wild guess category. 20. Why did Eidhin not join Viz in the Iudicium? Following on from the previous question, the idea is that dying as a reward for betraying his friend might have violated Dram Kai Freith, the code of honourable death to which Eidhin subscribes. But again, this is very much a wild guess. 21. Why did Viz's locator stone and then the tracking plate both stop working near the ruins? The second set of ruins on Solovargas seem to have a will dampening effect. It could be that this is related to accordance. At places where the three worlds are close together, or if you're able to bring them close together, as Esteban does at the Normakia, then will simply stops working for some reason. 22. Who is the scarred man? Pass. 23. Who is Emissa working for? My best guess on this is Veridius. It fits with Emissa giving Viz water near the start of the book, as well as her knowing about the blood taint. Veridius could also have been the person who told Emissa about Indol's plan to defect to religion, since Veridius is probably the person Indol is most likely to have discussed this with. 24. What was the war against concurrence? In my previous video, I discussed the theory that Caten has a secret god-king. My favourite take on concurrence links to this. The word concurrence usually means either agreement or things happening at the same time. You might say that two people concur about their favourite flavour of ice cream, or that two events concur if they took place simultaneously. One theory is that concurrence, with a capital C, could lean into the simultaneity meaning, and have to do with ensuring the three worlds of Lucium, Obitium, and Res sync up in some way. But my preferred theory is that capital C concurrence leans into the agreement meaning, and points to something more like unanimity. Specifically, I think it could refer to a movement that tried to concentrate as much will as possible into a single person, or, in other words, to force everyone to concur with that person, who then gained godlike powers. The war against concurrence would then be the war of everyone who still possesses free will, no pun intended, against the god figure and their army of will slaves. This theory and the God King theory both got a big boost from the first chapter of The Strength of the Few, which ends with Searoar telling Viz that their mission is to kill a god. 25. Has anyone actually seen the Academy horses? Viz spends countless hours cleaning out the Academy stables, and there are multiple important scenes that take place either in or near them, but we never hear anything about the horses themselves. I think Veridius says they get used for mounted combat training, but nobody we know of actually does this during the whole of Viz's time at the Academy. Now, it could be that something is up with these horses. Just like the Alupi are larger and more intelligent than real-world wolves, The horses could be kept hidden from readers because they will be fantastical in some way. But my best hope is that this is just a minor goof by James Islington, which could later be turned into a recurring joke. Maybe in future books we'll get multiple scenes at a chicken coop, but nobody sees a chicken or something. Because this will be a short video, and because I have some theory ideas not captured in the 25 mysteries, I also have one bonus take. This is that the place where Viz appears in Lucium, at the end of the Will of the Many, will turn out to be Chimere, or the version of Chimere that exists in Lucium. The place Viz appears is described as having cloud-topped mountains in the distance, an icy breeze and snow on the ground. We know that Chimere is cold and mountainous, as well as being generally connected to the other worlds, so it seems like a good fit. Anyway, that's all I've got for now. Feel free to like and or subscribe if you enjoyed this, and thanks for watching.